Imagine a world where the most terrifying part of modern warfare is not the thunder of artillery or the clash of armored vehicles at the front lines. Instead, picture a silent chaos, a creeping dread, unfolding in the very heart of thriving cities. This is not the war of our grandfathers, defined by lines drawn on maps and the movement of battalions. It is a battle waged in the blinking of streetlights, the sudden silence of electric trains, and the cold, unyielding darkness that seeps into every home. The recent attacks on Pokrovsk have seized international headlines and ignited fierce debate among military experts. Commentators are quick to point fingers at Russian bombs, blaming them for the devastation. Yet to focus solely on what falls from the sky is to miss the true, insidious threat. The real danger lies not in the explosions themselves, but in the deliberate, calculated destruction of the infrastructure that sustains daily life. This danger is deeper, more intricate, and far more unsettling than any single missile strike. While politicians argue over the next shipment of Tomahawk missiles or the latest high-tech arsenal, a different kind of warfare is grinding on, relentless and unseen. The daily reality for millions in Ukraine is a ceaseless barrage, not just of bombs, but of drones, guided missiles, and cyber attacks. These are not mere accidents, nor are they random acts of terror. Each attack is part of an evolving strategy to systematically cripple the veins and arteries of Ukrainian society by targeting its most vital lifelines, power grids, electric substations, water supplies, and the sprawling web of roads and railways that connect cities to each other and to the outside world. Consider, for example, the blackout that recently plunged an entire neighborhood of Kharkiv into darkness for over 72 hours. Families, once accustomed to the hum of appliances and the glow of street lamps, suddenly found themselves lighting candles and rationing dwindling supplies of bottled water. Trains sat motionless on the tracks, their passengers stranded. The metro system, a lifeline for thousands, ground to a halt. Routine surgeries were canceled as hospital generators struggled, and food spoiled in the refrigerators of countless homes. This was not an isolated incident. It is now a recurring nightmare for cities across the country. Within the span of a single week, more than a dozen urban centers have faced similar fates. Explosions echo through the night, and the comforting certainty of electricity, something so basic it is almost invisible, becomes a memory. Substations that once powered entire districts now lie in twisted, blackened ruins. Roads are cratered, bridges reduced to rubble, and fuel depots set ablaze. The effect is cumulative. With each strike, another layer of normalcy is stripped away, leaving behind uncertainty and fear. History is replete with examples of warfare targeting infrastructure, but never before on this scale or with this precision. During the Second World War, strategic bombing campaigns sought to disrupt enemy industry and logistics. The Allied bombing of German railways and power plants, for instance, was intended to paralyze the Nazi war machine. Yet even those efforts often missed their mark, limited by the technology of the era. Today, with satellite-guided munitions and real-time intelligence, every strike can be calibrated to inflict maximum disruption with chilling efficiency. If you are focusing only on the trenches, the skirmishes, and the front lines, you are missing the most dangerous evolution of modern war. Right now, the conflict in Ukraine is morphing into a silent offensive, one that has the power to cripple entire societies overnight. To ignore this shift is to misunderstand both the present and the future. Tomorrow's wars may not be decided by who controls a city, but by who can keep the lights on and the trains running. How did this campaign of invisible destruction begin, and why has it proved so devastating? To answer that, we must trace the evolution of Russia's shifting strategy and what it means for Ukraine's survival, not just on the battlefield, but across the entire fabric of society. Behind every blackout, behind every stalled train and every silent phone line, there is a new kind of battlefield, one that rarely makes the headlines, but which shapes the war's course in profound ways. Ukrainian cities like Poltava, Sumy, Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia, Lviv, and Odessa have each become unwilling test cases in this new form of siege warfare. Drones, once the toys of hobbyists, are now the harbingers of devastation. Kamikaze drones, launched in swarms, seek out not enemy soldiers, but the substations and depots that keep society moving. Each is programmed for maximum impact, striking at fuel reserves, water filtration plants, or the switching yards that orchestrate the flow of goods. These are not random barrages. They are calculated, data-driven attacks designed to shatter routines and sever the supply chains that knit a nation together. Imagine the scene in a city like Odessa after a coordinated drone strike on its main power station. The port, a historic gateway for Ukrainian grain and exports since the 19th century, falls silent. Cranes freeze mid-swing, ships bob idly at the docks, and the city's iconic trams grind to a halt. For businesses, every hour without power is a blow. For families, every minute is a trial. The psychological effect is as damaging as the physical. The knowledge that nowhere is truly safe, that every day could bring fresh disaster. Russian forces have shifted their focus with chilling deliberation. Where once the crosshairs targeted high-value battlefield assets, tanks, artillery, command posts, now they rest on the veins of Ukraine's logistics. Night after night, the national power grid, transport hubs, and storage facilities are battered. The aim is clear: to push cities toward rolling blackouts and widespread energy shortages, to exhaust the will of the people and the resources of the state. Ukraine is not a passive victim in this new form of warfare. Drone swarms, built domestically and with Western help, streak across the sky in retaliation. Their mission: to disrupt Russian supply lines, destroy ammunition depots, and return the damage in kind. At the same time, Ukrainian leaders rush to reinforce the most vulnerable sectors. Engineers work around the clock to patch up the grid, restore water supplies, and reroute transport. Every day is a race against time and against the next incoming wave. But the strain is mounting. Emergency mobilization tightens, with strict rules on movement and new calls for men as young as 18 to prepare for service. Borders close, and the sense of being trapped intensifies. The psychological impact of these measures should not be underestimated. Families are separated, futures put on hold, and the ordinary rhythms of life are upended. This is a war escalating on multiple fronts, both in scale and in sophistication. Both sides leverage satellite intelligence, intercept each other's communications, and broadcast rapid updates via social media. Every new strike is not just a tactical event, but a battle for global attention and morale. Images of burning substations and paralyzed cities spread around the world in minutes, shaping perceptions and influencing the flow of aid and public opinion. The battlefield is no longer purely physical. Economic warfare is now a core weapon. Russia has ordered the seizure of Western assets within its borders in retaliation for international sanctions and frozen funds. This tit-for-tat escalation raises the stakes, threatening to destabilize economies far beyond Ukraine's borders. Both militaries wield financial levers and supply disruptions, each hoping to push the other's economy to the breaking point. Failing to grasp the complexity of this modern battlefield means missing how wars like these can freeze entire cities, cripple economies, and send shockwaves far beyond the front. This is not just a tug-of-war over territory. It is a deliberate campaign to exhaust the enemy's ability to function at every level. Yet even as the front line shifts and the power grid flickers, Ukraine's struggle is not only with missiles or blackouts. It is a contest for resilience, adaptation, and the will to endure under relentless pressure. The question becomes, what if the fastest way to win a war is not by capturing cities, but by plunging them into darkness and keeping them there? This is the new strategy unfolding in Ukraine. After systematically eliminating nearly 9/10 of Ukraine's most effective missile launchers, according to military analysts, Russian forces have changed course. The focus has shifted from direct assaults to attacks designed to cripple the country's core, its logistics, power, and transport networks. Night after night, coordinated barrages of missiles and drones hammer critical infrastructure. Power plants ignite in orange infernos visible for miles. Substations and fuel depots erupt. Rail yards and switching hubs are reduced to twisted metal. Each fresh strike leaves neighborhoods in the dark, commuters stranded, and the national grid teetering near collapse. In cities like Zaporizhzhia, entire blocks have gone days without heat during the freezing winter, forcing residents to improvise with makeshift stoves and communal shelters. The impact is felt by all. Cities that once pulsed with activity now seem frozen in time. With electricity gone, families huddle by candlelight, bracing against the cold in silent, unheated rooms. Transport grinds to a halt. Internet and phone signals vanish, severing connections not just to the outside world, but between neighbors in the same apartment building. Hospitals struggle to function, relying on dwindling supplies of fuel for their generators. Each blackout breeds confusion and fear, and the routines of daily life are unraveling, circuit by circuit, hour by hour. Ukraine scrambles to cope. Emergency mobilization sweeps men from 25 up to 60 years of age into service. Borders close, trapping the young and the desperate. Troops redeploy to shield vital sites, but morale frays as the home front suffers under bombardment. Supplies, fuel, batteries, food, even candles, grow scarce. Every day, survival becomes a little harder, and lines outside grocery stores grow longer as people stock up, never knowing when the next strike will come. Meanwhile, information warfare rages like another front entirely. Videos of burning substations and frantic evacuations flood social media, often blurring the line between truth and invention. Rumors of new attacks or impending evacuations spread faster than any official statement. Both sides fight to shape what people believe, but certainty is rare and fear is everywhere. In the confusion, false reports about contaminated water or chemical attacks can spark panic, as happened in the early days of the conflict in Mariupol. A new factor is rewriting the rules of defense. Drones. Swarms of them fill the sky, overwhelming air defenses designed for simpler threats. Every day brings new tactics, as Ukraine's defenders scramble to counter these unpredictable high-tech weapons. Anti-drone nets and electronic jammers are deployed, but with mixed success. The sky, once a source of comfort, is now a source of dread. So as soldiers battle at the front, an invisible conflict spreads behind the lines. If Ukraine's infrastructure collapses, even the bravest army cannot fight, because the front will be everywhere ordinary people struggle just to endure. The lesson is stark. A modern nation's strength is inseparable from the resilience of its infrastructure. As the lights flicker and the country's pulse weakens, the war's next phase is coming into focus. How much longer can a nation hold out when every home becomes a battleground? The history of siege warfare is instructive here. During the siege of Leningrad in the Second World War, the city endured almost 900 days of starvation, bombardment, and deprivation. Yet it survived, largely due to the unbreakable spirit of its citizens and a relentless effort to keep supplies trickling in. The situation in Ukraine is eerily reminiscent, though the means of attack are far more sophisticated and the threats more multifaceted. If today's strikes are only the opening moves, imagine our cities after months, or even years, of this relentless campaign. Instead of quick victories, the future could be shaped by a slow siege, where every blackout, every blast, grinds away at hope and any sense of normalcy. The psychological toll is immense. Children grow up associating the sound of sirens with bedtime, and adults become experts in improvisation and rationing. This is not a war of swift conquests. It is a test of endurance. Each new attack on infrastructure, whether power plants in Kharkiv, bridges in Dnipro, or ports in Odessa, makes repairs slower and crisis deeper. Cities slip further into hardship, caught in a loop of destruction and incomplete recovery. The lessons from the prolonged sieges of Aleppo and Sarajevo in recent decades remind us, the longer the siege, the more profound the scars on a nation's psyche, and the more difficult the road to recovery. For civilians, daily life becomes a gamble. Children stay home as schools are shuttered or plunged into darkness. Hospitals stand paralyzed, their equipment useless when the power fails. Emergency crews, stretched thin by endless assaults, struggle to reach the wounded or trapped. The burden of care falls more heavily on communities and families, reminiscent of the community kitchens and neighborhood watch groups that sprang up during the London Blitz in the 1940s. Yet the damage goes far beyond bombs and drones. The economic war bites even harder. Western companies operating in Russia and Ukraine face impossible choices, pressured by sanctions and fresh Russian laws threatening to seize foreign assets. Ukraine's already battered economy reels from constant disruptions. Inflation soars. The price of basic necessities doubles or triples, and ordinary people are forced to make impossible choices between heat, food, and medicine. Diplomatic cracks are widening. Western aid arrives with more strings attached. Leaders bicker over red lines, wary of escalation and the blowback of sanctions. Both sides dig in, hardening positions, closing off paths to compromise or swift resolution. The world watches, but the sense of urgency wanes, replaced by exhaustion and distraction. On the ground, the nature of battle is shifting. Blitzkrieg assaults fade, replaced by grinding encirclements. Armies focus on choking supply lines, draining resources, and wearing down the enemy in a long, slow bleed. The tactics recall the attritional warfare of the First World War, but updated for the digital age. The longer this war of attrition drags on, the higher the risks. Exhaustion and instability threaten not just the armies, but entire societies. Collapse could strike suddenly, in ways no one can predict. The fall of Saigon in 1975, for example, was preceded by months of slow erosion, until the final collapse came with shocking speed. As this grim reality settles in, we must ask, what lessons does this new era of siege warfare offer for the future? To grasp what the coming years might hold, we must look beyond the battlefield itself. The next chapter reveals the broader implications for security, strategy, and civilian life, not just in Ukraine, but around the globe. When cities become targets and the grid turns into the battlefield, how do you brace for the unimaginable? Modern warfare is no longer confined to soldiers and trenches. Today, the resilience of infrastructure, the integrity of information, and the spirit of ordinary people are as crucial as any weapon. Power plants, fiber cables, and transit networks now hold the line alongside tanks and artillery. This shift means responsibility stretches beyond generals and government halls. Every city and citizen must be ready for a sudden loss of power, communication, or basic mobility. Picture waking to a skyline darkened for days, or even weeks, without electricity, phone signals, or working trains. Would you know how to cope? The floods and blackouts that struck New York during Hurricane Sandy in 2012 offer a sobering preview. Within hours, stores ran out of batteries, water, and food. Within days, panic and rumors spread faster than official information. The future of war is tilting toward attacks on logistics, energy, and the digital sphere. Victory may hinge on who can keep the lights burning, supplies moving, and truth flowing. In this new conflict, adaptability and resilience decide who falters and who endures. The cities that survive will be those that have prepared, by stockpiling essentials, building local networks of support, and training citizens in basic emergency skills. Yet a hidden front runs through morale. The speed of information, what people see, share, and trust, can shape a city's fate. Propaganda, rumors, and fear can sweep through the streets faster than any missile. Today, digital literacy and the ability to verify facts are not just good habits, they are essential for survival. In a blackout, whispers can cause as much chaos as bombs. The panic that followed false reports of chemical attacks in Syria or the confusion during the 2003 North American blackout remind us that managing information is as vital as managing resources. Headlines may feature bombs and drones, but economic and legal warfare are now just as potent. Asset freezes, sanctions, and financial blockades can immobilize a nation as effectively as a missile strike. Lawyers and bankers fight alongside soldiers on this new front. In the 21st century, legal disputes over frozen assets in Switzerland or London can decide the fate of entire industries. But do not forget, the burden falls heaviest on ordinary people. When grids collapse, supplies run dry, and families are cut off from the world, the vulnerable suffer most. What happens in a single blacked-out city can be a warning for many more tomorrow. The elderly, the sick, and the young are always the hardest hit, as seen during the rolling blackouts in California in the early 2000s. Fail to prepare, and you risk being left truly powerless, without electricity, news, or a way out. The lesson is clear. Resilience is no longer optional. It is everyone's responsibility now. Communities must invest in local power generation, stockpile essentials, train in first aid and crisis communication, and develop networks of mutual aid. Governments must harden critical infrastructure, diversify energy sources, and build rapid response teams for cyber and physical threats. As the war in Ukraine demonstrates, infrastructure is both a weapon and a weakness. The next act will show how these realities are shaping strategies and survival on the ground. Already, reports from Kyiv indicate that neighborhood groups equipped with walkie-talkies and emergency supplies have sprung up, echoing the civil defense groups of London during the Blitz. These local efforts, though small, may prove decisive in weathering the storms ahead. A new, shadowed chapter is unfolding. Can you decipher what lingers between the lines? This conflict is no longer defined by lightning advances or dramatic offensives. It has hardened into a slow, methodical contest where infrastructure, power lines, railways, bridges, becomes the true front. The tactics are relentless: isolate supply routes, cripple energy networks, and sap the spirit of populations, often hundreds of miles from the nearest trench. For both Ukraine and Russia, the battlefield now extends deep into civilian life. It is not just about counting tanks or territory. It is about surviving blackouts, traffic snarls, and empty store shelves. Factories pause, hospitals flicker on backup generators, families huddle in the dark. Every missile strike on a substation is a shockwave through daily existence. The echoes of the 1999 NATO bombing of Serbia, which targeted bridges and power plants, remind us that the pain and disruption do not end when the bombs stop falling. But the implications stretch far beyond Ukraine's borders. Across continents, governments and strategists are taking note. The harsh lesson: tomorrow's wars may not hinge on who breaks through first, but on who withstands the slow strangulation of critical infrastructure. In a wired world, a blackout in one nation can ripple outward, unsettling markets, politics, and lives oceans away. The 2017 NotPetya cyber attack, which began in Ukraine, quickly spread to disrupt global shipping and logistics companies, causing billions in damages. Understanding these new rules is not just useful, it is essential. Awareness is the first defense, long before sirens wail or borders are crossed. The shape of conflict is changing, and with it, our sense of security. When the steady hum of daily life falters, the true test begins, not just for armies, but for entire societies. So what practical steps can cities and individuals take to prepare for this new age of warfare? First, invest in backup power sources. Solar panels, generators, and battery banks can provide critical reserves during outages. Second, create local communication networks that do not rely solely on the internet or cell towers. Walkie-talkies and satellite phones can be lifesavers. Third, stockpile essential goods: water, non-perishable food, medications, and first aid supplies. Fourth, build community resilience through neighborhood groups, coordinated emergency plans, and drills. Governments must also act. They should harden infrastructure against cyber and physical attacks, diversify energy supplies, and develop rapid response teams to restore services after strikes. Transparency and clear communication are vital. Officials must counter rumors with timely, accurate information. Lessons learned from previous crises, like the community response to Hurricane Katrina or the Japanese earthquake of 2011, show that preparation and coordination can save lives. The first sparks of future wars are flickering at the edges of our awareness. Will you recognize their glow before the darkness spreads? The answer depends on how well we learn these lessons and how determined we are to build resilience, at every level, from government halls to the smallest neighborhood. The future may be uncertain, but the responsibility for survival is shared by all.